Welcome to the Fight for Our Citizen podcast. I'm your host, Uncle Fox. I'm here again with my cousin Batsulwin Brown, and tonight's our last night here in Pechanga, and we just finished up the Boys with Braids conference, and there's about 300 people that came, more than 300. I mean, like a lot of parents came, right? A lot of parents, a lot of youth, and then a lot of men with long hair and more, and then the women came, and so it was pretty good. And so we had that, and it went till like 4 o'clock ended with some bird singers. We danced for them in the feather dance, so everything was a really good day. It seemed like really we had that other conference yesterday, but today seemed like it was a lot more people here today.
Yeah, it's usually Boys with Braids has been on the road for the last couple of years, and since it's come down from Canada, it's been really popular to address some of the issues we're having in the schools, and I think the official somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 today that pre-registered, and then whoever else came, registered, right? On site. Yeah. So there was a good mixture of adults and elders and youth, fathers, and there was even a few, I think about 7 school administrators that I heard. So
oh, really?
So there was a pretty good amount of people, and I know that's the population they're trying to engage as well, just to address what's happening in the school districts.
Yeah, it's definitely something that my son could make, because he tells me, I think he told me recently that he still gets like catcalled, and he works in construction. He works in construction. Mm-hmm. So he works with, he's an electrician, so he works with carpenters, all in there, like at a new apartment complex.
Yeah.
And he told me that he'll get cat calls once in a while or say anything about his hair. And then I heard it today about all that, and I was like, he should probably come to one, because when you guys put them on stage like that, it just kind of made them proud of their hair. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's the big part is and it was said today, we really don't know why we grow our hair long. We're just either expected to do it, or maybe our fathers do it, but they don't really tell us why.
Yeah.
And in terms of identity, if it's just to be recognized as a tribal person, that's, I guess the idea is that everybody has long hair or has to have long hair, to identify. Right. And so I think that's a part of the understanding the big picture, that sometimes that isn't the custom for all tribal people,
right?
And so it's really good to be able to share that with the young ones that come up, because a lot of times, and I know from my own experience that I didn't really know why. I just did it, and then at some point when I got older and first grew out my hair, it was like I was making a statement then, and I knew what I was doing, what my intention was. But as a younger kid, not really knowing, and then getting the comments and the cat calls and those things that you don't really know how to deal with, and you don't expect it,
right?
And especially if it's coming from other men or whoever it's coming from, it's like it's weird, and so how does that impact our sons and the young people when somebody does that to them?
I mean, like you're talking about you about the cat call, and when my son told me like a couple months ago, I mean that's today, the 2024, so it still goes on today. You know, like getting cat call from men like that, and they know he's a guy, but they're doing that to be an ass. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so to do that with him, but I bet it's different for him when he goes back home and then he goes to the dances and everything. Everybody so proud of his hair. You know what I mean? So I always tell my kids, like, we're definitely living two worlds, because he's at a dance and then on a weekend, but his friends are maybe out at the club or at Disneyland. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's the part we were talking about today, how you really do have one foot in both worlds at times, and I think that's the hard part when it comes down to it, because we want to be who we are, and then we have people who have their opinions, and they let them be known, and I always wonder too, one of the questions I'd raised with this kind of movement with Boys with Braids is, have you talked to any non-tribal people that grow their hair out and see if they're getting the same type of treatment? And so we haven't had the opportunity to talk to At least I haven't, gone into the schools and talked to, um, Caucasian kids that grow their hair long, and to see if they have the same getting bullied or being treated in a negative way. And because I know, like, the people I remember having kind of long hair, they were kind of, celebrated for their long blonde hair,
Yeah,
and,
right.
And so
Thor and all these guys, these Marvel guys,
yeah. And so I always wonder if there's, they're experiencing the same thing, and I just haven't been able to, like, connect those dots to find that out.
Yeah, it's again, like, I don't know about if my son's mom, that she lives in Globe, and I don't know if she ever talked to him about how to take care of his hair, because I've never talked to him about how to take care of his hair, and I think my daughter Nomi tells him how to take care of his hair, but again, I've never told him how to take care of his hair.
Yeah.
I just expect him to take care of his hair. He has long hair.
Yeah.
He's native. He should know how to take care of his hair. Again, that's something that David saying today.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I never really talked to him about. I always tell him, like, oh, your hair looks nice and it looks good when you're at the dance, but that's about it. And never tell him how to take care of it.
Yeah, and it is different. Like, and I was sharing today just how awkward it was to try to, like, learn to braid my own hair, and then not knowing, how to brush it out. And I would always, instead of starting from the back, I'd brush the top, and then I'd have all kind of knots in my hair.
Yeah.
And because I was doing it wrong, I wasn't going from the long part to the top of my head.
Yeah.
And so I'd pull out all kind of hair in the comb, and it was because I wasn't brushing it the proper way to, help it grow. And then I remember one time my partner, she's like, "Did you cut your hair?" And so I trimmed the ends. And I go, "Yeah." And she's like, well, why? Like, she's all, cutting like your split ends doesn't make your hair grow. And that was my thought, that it helps your hair get healthy and grow. And she's like, no, like, it grows from your scalp, like,
yeah, right.
and so just trying to, like, learn those things that never had the conversation about, and trying to understand, and like, I've gone through that period of where I've used too much soap and did make my hair fall out,
right,
and
right.
not realizing how you're supposed to take care of it, and not always do that all the time.
Right.
So there's all of those things that go on too.
Well, when I talked to Wea, I asked him, like, what kind of shampoo he used one time, and it was like, man shampoo. I was like, I don't think maybe you should be using that. I mean, like, for me, I have short hair, so it's easy to use, man shampoo that just has a good smell. I said, but I think you need, like, conditioner, probably, something in it. And he was like, what? So I told, normally my daughter was telling him, what he needs.
Yeah.
But again, like, I've never told him about it. And then again today, when you had your class today, I never really talked to my son about what to do with his hair. I know Apaches, you take that hair and burn it. You had said that today in class, and I know it's an old tradition, but I've heard from my grandma that someone could take your hair and do witchcraft with it. So there is bad medicine out there. But yeah, I don't think I've ever told him that too. So that's something that we need to have a conversation with. And I'm glad that I was there for the today to learn all this stuff.
Yeah, it is, and like, it's like with everything, there was a reason behind it. And I remember when I got into the relationship with my partner, and she would say, like, even just like leaving things kind of cluttered up, that you can let bad things get in there and they can hide in there. Right. And the same thing with your hair. If you leave it around, things can get on it. And even, with putting food out, if you leave it out too long, the intention is to feed your ancestors, but if you leave that food out too long, other things are going to come around and get it too. And so it's always trying to learn and incorporate these good teachings in your life, and then also trying to understand, like, why our people did these things, why they were important, and just knowing that there's always a purpose behind why we're doing something. Right. And whether, like I say, we've been told or we've had the conversations, it's definitely something. When I first went to the first Boys with Braids I attended, it was really interesting to hear what other presenters were saying. Right. And what they did. And so I started to ask my mom, what did we do? And then I remember Graham always saying to pick up your hair and not leave your stuff laying around, and so it just made sense, some of it. And I think as we kind of move on, and the one thing I didn't talk about today, which we got started a little late with the session that I did. Yeah. It was supposed to start at 1:15, and we started maybe about 1:30. Try to let people get there. And the other part I didn't share is even the same thing with your teeth. If your teeth get taken out, ask for them. Don't let them take your teeth. And then even for like the young ladies that become moms, they can take their placenta. And a lot of times I've had experience with the newer babies where my partner, she says, well, I want my placenta. And they'll be like, well, why? What do you want it for? And start to get kind of nosy about it. And she's like, well, I don't need to tell you. Like it's mine, and I want it. And so we, they take care of it when they go back home. And so there's all those parts that, sometimes we were focusing on hair, but there's all those other parts of why we need to take care of our things.
Yeah. I never realized that. And then, when I was sitting in that class, you had your class today, I took a picture of you. I don't know if you've seen it. I took a picture of you, with your title of your presentation. And one of our friends on my daughter's godmother on Instagram was like, "Oh, awesome! I really like the title." Yeah. And then I said, "Do you know what it's from?" And she said, "Yeah." She knew it was from that, the song. Yeah. So, how did that come about with your presentation?
Yeah, it was definitely something that, when I shared the story today, and it's usually always hard to have that kind of time crunch because you want to say so much, and I usually try to just use the slides to spark conversation, and so I'm not just saying the same things over and over. Yeah. But I didn't get to really talk about the whole process of what happened to me. Yeah. And so the part I didn't share today in that story of coming out to Arizona in October of last year was that this older lady, she actually pulled my hair because she didn't want me to take this open seat. Yeah. And when she did that, I got upset, and I turned around and was gonna yell at her, and then I realized it's an old lady, and so I tried to tell her, like, don't do that, like that's not okay, and just kind of lectured her about why you don't touch people's hair, and especially in our culture, like you're disrespecting and you're in a sense assaulting me by doing that, and she didn't get it, and she tried to say, well, I'm admiring your hair, and I was like, no, you're not. Well, you don't do it like that. And so the part of it is so I have an old sports injury, rotator cuff injury, and so it's like causes issue up here in my shoulder, and so when she pulled my hair, it strained my neck too. And so after all the process of going through and trying to de-escalate my own self from not overreacting, because I didn't want to get kicked off the plane for.
You have been the first one to get kicked off the plane.
Yeah, and so that's what went through my mind, is like, how does it look, me, this Indian man talking to this old lady in a negative way or getting loud with her. And so I knew I couldn't do that, and so I tried to deal with it. And then later on, when I first got asked a couple years to do a workshop, that song came to my first thing came to my mind.
Protect your neck.
And so so it was for youth, and I was like, well, I'm gonna see if any of the youth know it. And so usually what I do when we're closer to home, and I didn't do it this time, is I'll get a gift card, and if somebody gets the answer right, I'll give it to them. And so that way it just helps to interact with your audience and have them engaged, and so it's fun. And some of the kids in Sacramento actually knew the song. Some of them knew the lyrics. And so it was cool because it wasn't their generation, but they knew of the song.
Oh, okay. Well, Rosemary, if you're listening to this, I'll give you a little gift card, just because I think out of my story I had like maybe 150 views, and a lot of people hit the like, but she's the only one who knew where that comment that came from. So yeah, it was pretty cool to see that. But it did keep today in your class, people were engaged, and understood what you were talking about, and Especially the thing of you, telling about Auntie Sharon how she cut our hair.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's cut my hair too, or a couple of times. But like for me, my mom cut my hair all the way until I was like out of high school.
Yeah.
And when I was out of high school and had my own money to pay for a barber, I would get a haircut. But other than that, I mean, if you look at the pictures of me, you could tell my mom was cutting my hair, So.
Yeah, and that was the part too. I like sharing that because sometimes you have this idea of what you want and you get what you get. You know,
right.
And you can't be mad. You can't say nothing. And so I like to share that to let the kids know, because my younger sons too like to get their hair cut and fixed up, and I try to remind them that sometimes like when I grew up, you just had to get it and what they gave you.
Yeah, right.
Whatever mood Auntie was in, if you got her in a good mood, like she did your hair good. If she was upset, she was pulling your hair a little bit and just cutting away, and so it was really good to share those stories. And so I try to incorporate that so the kids really understand that this is important and this is why we do this, and to try to instill in them that it's important to protect all of your body and your hair and your sacred things, and so a lot of times the kids have no clue of that they are sacred, and they need to be taking care of themselves in a good way. And so it's just trying to remind them that it's even deeper than just around the boys with braids.
Right. And there's a lot of reasons why people get their hair cut, right? I know my mom, and this is just I heard from my mom. Anybody can do what they do, believe in, but she would say that where she's from, Apache, that the wife cuts their hair when the husband dies, and that was it. So I know other I don't know what other cultures do, but I know that they cut their hair. I haven't heard of like today we had one guy talk how many times he cut his hair. So I know that's one of the traditions, but I don't know how what's everyone's protocol.
Yeah.
So I just hope that everybody knows what their tradition is and cutting it instead of just going off what other people has done in the past.
Yeah, and that's always the hard part too is and I think we always say this, and I like that we have that same perspective of go find out what your people do.
Yeah.
And
right.
go there first. And if you can find something, and if not, then you need to figure out what are you going to do.
Right.
Or what are you going to incorporate, and because that's the reality, like you're saying, it's not everything is for everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's important to know that maybe you don't know right now, and that'll come to you later on from somebody in your family.
Yeah.
But you could just keep your hair, until you know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part of just telling the young people to, again, go home, go to your family, and start a conversation. And I think that's the biggest part of it for me too, is trying to connect people back to their families. And because there is a lot of dysfunction and issues within some of the families, so people aren't talking to people, and so it's like you can use this as a way to go and have a conversation, and it might not have any other context that might bring up disagreement or something. Just seek it out, and maybe somebody can guide you in that way.
When you talked about the getting your hair cut and then asking to take your hair, I never again my daughter got her first haircut, and she cut off like maybe a good 2 inches, and they my daughter asked them, like, you braid it, and when you cut it, I want it.
Yeah.
And so I've never told my daughter, like, we're gonna take your hair, like. But when you had mentioned that today, I was like, oh man, yeah, I never like say, hey, let me have all that hair on the floor. You know what I mean? Because they just all they do is scoop it up and throw it in the trash, like you were saying today. So I never, again, that's another thing I didn't think of today. So it was good class to have, be in there for that.
Yeah, and I think that's those were things too. Like when I talk to my partner, it's really good to say and ask, well, what did you guys do? And because before I realized doing that, I didn't really have to worry because Auntie would pick it up.
You're doing it at her house. Yeah. So you're fine. Yeah.
And then when it came later to, hey, I'm going to go to, Cousin Nate's and have him do it. And then again, it's your relative.
Right.
And so the first time, like, the boys started going to a barber that they knew or they found online, I was like, well, make sure you get all your hair, you know, and they were like, well, why? And so it helped to start. Well, this is why.
Right.
You want to do this, and I'm not telling you, you know, like don't go over there, but just make sure wherever you go, like you pick up your hair because you don't know what they're gonna do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you know, again, we talk about land being sacred, you know, and water being sacred, and just what we're trying to, you know, save here, but we never talk about the hair being sacred, you know, and the women, they, you know, they know for some reason they know that already, you know, they have that in them. And now when you guys talk about it today, I think about my daughter. She has that in her. I've seen her take care of her hair.
Yeah.
But again, I never thought about talking to my son about it, you know, and it's a also a sacrifice because I know for him, he loves his hair, but again, it's hot. He's got to, you know, and so he's outside. He's a, you know, like I say, he's an electrician, and he's in Phoenix, and sometimes he's 115, and he's out there with his hair. But it's easy for me to say, nah, keep your hair, you know, it looks nice. But he keeps it, and that's a big sacrifice. And I think all those boys down there like that, it's a big sacrifice, you know.
Yeah, and I think when we think about it too, I remember when I thought like, man, it's gonna just make me hot, and but it does protect you too from the sun directly on your head.
Yeah.
And so there is benefits but yeah, like if you wear it down, you're gonna feel the difference. Having it pulled back or having it braided, you'll definitely feel the increase of the heat because you're retaining that heat too. And so I think that's the idea again of, like you're saying, the sacrifice of having it, taking care of your hair, and making sure that, you know, you're doing all the things you need to do to take care of yourself as well, because it's an extension, you know, of yourself, and it's important to remind, you know, our young people, and I think, you know, once my older boys, when me and their mom separated, you know, I had to like take on trying to have those conversations that maybe their mom should have had with them, you know, and so it didn't happen, and so I had to kind of start asking people, well, what did we do? Like, what did our family do over in Yokeo?
Yeah.
You know, what did we do here, and what did grandma and them do? And just trying to find out so I can tell them this is why we did that.
Yeah. And when you mentioned about your braiding, I was like, I never know my son knows how to braid his hair. You know, I never did ask him either.
Yeah.
But my son, you know, when he lives in Arizona with me, I mean, not with me, but his own place. But now that I think about it, because today when I saw all those guys with their hair, you know, like everyone has their hair in a braid, but boys just braids.
Yeah.
Wea and all my nephews who have long hair, dude, they just have theirs out.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen them in braids.
Yeah.
Wea and my other my other nephews, they're just all out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't want to braid your hair, like, you know, and they don't say anything. But now I think about it, I can't think of the in St. Carlos for sure. I don't see them in braids. I see them just out.
Yeah.
So I guess this must be the cultural thing too, because I do like the braid too.
Yeah.
Like I saw those boys today; they had their hair, you know, back and braided, and it looks really nice. But again, my son and his cousins, they're out.
Yeah. And that's like when you say that, it's important to, again, as we talked about earlier, the braid is not the same thing for everybody.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I like the times just to wear my hair in a hair tie, you know, and not braided. Sometimes I feel like it being like that. But one thing that I tried to do early on is just wear it down, and it's uncomfortable for me. Just it all out.
Yeah.
And some people can just rock it like that.
Yeah,
you
right.
know, and they look good and they feel good, and me, when it's all out, it's like, oh man, it's all in my way. And
I'm gonna get hot.
Yeah. And so I think that's again that cultural piece you're talking about. That's just in him. You know, to wear it like that, and your other nephews to just wear it and let it be free.
Yeah, because I think even my Uncle Wensler, I've never seen him in braid.
Yeah.
You know, I now when I think about it, I don't see them like that.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just the where you live at in your region and the way they are. So I'll make sure I talk to Wea when I get home and talk to him about his hair and things like that, because he does have a tough time with his hair.
Yeah.
I noticed too with long hair, because, you know, like today we danced shake head, you know, I mean, we had that feather dance, and with his long hair, it takes a little bit longer to get ready. He had to put his hair in a ponytail. Then he put his head net on, and he, so I'm like, oh man, I didn't realize that it takes time too with long hair.
Yeah.
That you gotta, when you put on your riggins, it takes some time. Other than for me, it's easy.
Yeah.
For him, he has to, you even got a hair tie because I gotta do this first before I can even put this on.
And it does, and that's a thing I experienced early on too. Is how am I gonna put my hair back to? Because if I have it in a braid and I dance, then the back piece isn't set and flush. It's on the hair, and so it moves a whole bunch.
Yeah,
and
bulky so in the back.
Yeah, and so I remember one time when I was dancing with a braid, it actually flipped off over my head, and it kind of fell in. It didn't come all the way off, but it just fell over the flicker band. And then another time, I let all my hair out, and then my head net popped up, and it wasn't all the way.
Oh yeah,
it wasn't all the way secure. And so I was like, man, why is it doing this? And it's because I had long hair and I never experienced what I was supposed to do or how I should wear my hair when I was dancing. Right. And then so later it was like just pulled back, and then later I could just leave it out after I figured I need to tie it a certain way, a little different, and so those are all things I just had to like learn and go through trial and error to get comfortable with it. And so it is different. It does take more time. And once like it popped up on me the one time, and it was just still the string on my head, and the net was just kind of sitting up here and all like loose, and I couldn't really fix it. I just had to leave it like that until we got done dancing. And so it was definitely a different experience.
Yeah, it did. Like I said, I didn't realize that until he got ready, and then I was like, oh man, you need some time to fix that hair. But yeah, today was a really good presentation on Boys with Braids. It's not like when I first heard of Boys with Braids, it was like, well, I'm not gonna register because I don't have long hair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when I got here and pre-registered, here, I think that everybody should go to something like this. Even though you might have someone in your family or your nephews that have long hair that they don't get talked to. So I think hopefully we put the word out that I think everybody should attend this kind of presentation.
Yeah, and it's like everything. If we want things to be better, like we all have to be advocates for everybody, for each other, for our kids, our nephews and our nieces, and otherwise, we do leave them vulnerable and out there to have people say bad things to them or treat them a certain way. And so it's important for everybody to come. And I know that was one of the things my boys first felt like, well, we don't have long hair. Like, why are we going to go? And they didn't have the intention to want to grow it out. And I was like, let's just go. It's not, I don't think it's a requirement to, that you have to grow it out. And so that's been good. It's still, the part of still taking care of your hair and it being sacred and learning those values that are important. So I encourage everybody to come, to whether they want to grow their hair out or not, or they like it short or whatever they got going on, to hear, because we do need more people to advocate, and the more people that understand and know, the stronger we are in terms of making sure, like, when they're talking about changing policy at schools and how our kids, our boys, can still get their hair pulled and nobody can do nothing because there's no policy. And it made me realize when I was thinking about like Troy Polamalu, how they used to yank him down by his hair because it was long, and even Marshawn Lynch, how they yanked his dreads out. You know? And
there's no
rules.
No rules for that.
Yeah. They could face mask. You can horse collar. You can't do that, but you can pull the hair out if you need to. You know?
Right.
And so I don't know why that's never been a rule, or why it's never been looked at like it's an assault on somebody.
And one of the things that you have brought up today, and I've heard this from my mom. Again, my mom's Apache, so I'm not sure. She's a Chiricahua Apache and Yavapai, but she would tell me, like, when I was younger, and this would scare me. Like, she would say, "Don't let any girl touch your hair," and I'm like, "Why?" And she'd be like, "Well, what if she's on her monthly? Your hair's gonna fall out." You know what I mean? So that was one of the things that I was like, "Oh man, like, I don't want you touching my hair because I'm gonna go bald." You know? So like that was always in the back of my mind. And again, you
Mm-hmm.
brought it up today, and I thought, yeah, on my side of the family, my mom was really,
Mm-hmm.
like you better not have anybody touch your hair if they're on their monthly. Well, how am I going to know they're on
Yeah.
their monthly? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that was one of the main, because again, the women are powerful during
Mm-hmm.
those times.
Yeah.
So her touching your head like that was going to, take some of your hair out.
Yeah.
That really freaked me out when she told me.
Yeah. And I think about that too, and just kind of remembering when I started to grow my hair, and I asked my mom, well, like if I can't braid it, like who can I ask to braid it? And she's, well, if it's one of your relatives, I'd be okay with it, and or your sisters, and so there was times when nobody was around, and so I wouldn't braid it, and then sometimes when I was playing ball, I'd try to braid it, and somebody that we knew from fast pitch, a girl would, oh hey, I'll braid your hair, and I would go, okay, but then realizing, oh man, I'm not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
And so like,
Yeah.
it definitely is, like I say, when I started to really follow the values and the protocols, it was important. But
Right.
early on, I didn't. I just was still didn't have all the knowledge that I have today about it, and so I just kind of, at times when I needed it braided, I would just ask somebody, but then I never thought about like what your mom was saying.
Yeah.
I never thought about even my mom saying, no, it should be your relative, and so those are all things I had to like put into practice later, and just never had a need to know any of that, so.
Yeah, and when they have those kind of protocols and things like that, it's like when my mom told me that, I never had thought the questions, like sometimes people that want to learn anything, they would say, why? Well, I don't ask why. She tell me, you know what I mean? Like she tells me, don't let anybody touch your hair, because they might be on their monthly. That's okay. Yeah, I won't.
Yeah.
But I never had the idea to ask her why.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't want to either get slapped or, or anything like that. So, I mean, that's how, for me, that's how most of us learn. Is
Yeah.
they just tell us, no, don't do that,
Yeah.
And so I've learned, but later on, then I know why they did it.
Yeah.
So they tell you when you're young. When I get older, then I'm like, oh, okay, this is why it had told
Yeah.
me, And so I'll tell my kids, And so it's just the way we were raised.
Yeah, and when I think back on all of those things, and even I remember when, like, I didn't listen, I'd get pulled by the hair, and or I'd talk back and get my hair pulled, and I always would think about that, and then I remember like, well, if I don't grow my hair, you can't be pulling me around by the hair,
Right?
And,
Yeah.
And so, but then later on, when I started to kind of go, well, why would my mom do that? And so I asked her one time, and I don't know how many of the boys came up on this story, and I said, one time I go, your grandma, she pulled my hair, and I tried to just drop to the ground, and so she let it go, and I go, and she did it, and it stood me right back up, and I go, but I was trying to like do something that wasn't good, and not listen, and I go, and when she did that, I knew like I was in trouble, you know? And
right.
I said, so like there was that part of it too, and so it was always a reminder of, like this is kind of the consequence.
All culture and tradition, people don't know that the women are mainly the enforcer of us, when we're young. Because I know that my dad, he's very kind and carefree, but he would say he was going to spank us, but it's because my mom would say, "Hey, Thomas," and my dad, he'd be like, "God darn it, where's my belt?" Like
Yeah.
He's never ever hit me with the belt, but later on I thought like he's just saying that, he's never done it, but he'd be, "God darn it, where's my belt?" And I'd be, "Oh, okay, I better sit still because my dad's gonna get his belt." But I've never seen him with his belt in his hand.
Yeah.
I've never seen him, anything like that. But it was just one of the things that my mom would say, if you don't do it, I'm gonna tell your dad. And I was more scared of my mom than my dad, and so it's always our mother that is the one that's raised us.
Yeah, and I think that was just always something that was innate and natural, that the moms did that, you know, and are the ones who took care of that, and because I think about the same thing too. I was more scared of my mom than my dad, you know, and so it was understood that this is the reason why, and like you were saying earlier about Nomi, and just having that innate knowledge as a woman, you know, and that's a part of it, you know, and I really try to, you know, share that part to empower the girls of, we don't own you, you're not ours, you know, and to respect you guys as women and life givers. We have to kind of change how we talk and how we look at things and recognize the knowledge they have inside of them that we have to go and get from them.
Right.
You know, and a lot of times we don't, because we think we should know it all, or we feel like the man, we're the head, and we should be the ones to, you know, share. But there's all of that knowledge that the women have, and it just comes right out, you know, and it's inside of them, and they do it, and maybe nobody even told them, you know, but they already know what to do.
Yeah.
And so that's really like when you're saying that, it's like, yeah, that's what those young girls need to remember, you know, when they get into that age. And I try not to, you know, talk too much of about women's business, because it's not my place to say that, you know, but I want the girls to know that they belong in this conversation as well. It's not just about the boys and their hair. It's also about what the women say and what they want and what they're going to share and teach, that they have the right to say what they need to say, you know. And so I really enjoy when I do have a mix of young girls and boys, and even, you know, there's a few moms today, and so it's good when you talk and you kind of get that feedback of their body language, that like I agree with what you're saying, you know, and so that's always good too. I've never had anybody say, oh, that's not right, or you know, and so I really try to be conscious when I'm talking, that, you know, I'm not speaking out of turn, you know, when it comes to anything that we have going on. And that's what I told the young people in Sacramento, you know, if this is something you want to take and modify, like, go ahead and do that, you know, to make it work for you guys, and however you want to use it or add to it. And I try to be in that fashion of, you know, I might have put it together, but it doesn't belong to me. That's just our information and our knowledge. And if it helps you to format what you need to do, then go ahead, you know.
And so with the hair, I think, you know, when we have these kind of boys with braids, it always seems like we're trying to catch the boys up to where the women are at, right? It always seems like the women are kind of ahead of, even in school, the girls are always ahead of the boys. And in our culture in Pomo, you know, like the visionaries are the ones who had dreamed, are the women. In our culture, in Apache side, the women are the strongest. When there's a medicine woman, she's the strongest. You know, and the sunrise dances, the coming of age, are all the most important ceremony in Apache is a women's ceremony. So it always seems like we're always just trying to catch up, really, to what the women already know or what they're already doing. And so, especially my daughter is like that. She's very, I always feel like she's 2 steps ahead of me, you know, and me right now being, it's just me and my son, you know. I've been divorced, and she seems like she's the leader of the pack, you know, and she's only 20, but she seems like she's the one that tells what me and Wei need to do, you know, and and I'll be like, you're only 20 years old, what are you telling me for that, you know? And so, but again, she gets in that role, and my mom's in that role for a long time with the family, you know. With my dad there, my mom's the leader of the whole thing, and you know, and your mom, she's quiet, but I know for sure she's the leader of the family, you know.
And that's, you know, that's just their natural, you know, it's just natural in them, and I think that's the part too. And, you know, we're talking about leadership. It's like what you're saying is exactly right. It's us trying to catch up and model what they're already doing. You know, and I heard this story a few years ago. We were up near Humboldt, and this I believe she's a Hoopa lady, and she was talking about how, you know, they had all of these ceremonies for women. And the same thing was the flower dance up in their area, the coming age for women, and she was saying how at that time, you know, that young girl is the most powerful person on the earth to them, and everybody just wants to touch her, you know, and to get healed from her and blessed by her, and then she started to say, she goes, you know, there was a time where there wasn't anything for the men, there was no ceremonies, and she goes, and they had to come because we knew that the men would eventually destroy the women if they didn't have something. And she goes, so then came like the white deerskin dance and all these other dances.
Mm-hmm.
And she said because in the old times, the women could just feed the baby from the breast, and the man had to go and hunt or had to go and fish and had to do all this work to provide, and the woman could just feed the baby and nourish the baby from the breast. And so she said that at some point the ceremonies came because the men would end up doing something to harm the women because they felt inadequate, you know? And so it's like
inferior most of the time.
Yeah. And so that's a real thing, you know. And I think that's the part of why, like, you know, like our grandmas and our moms put us up in places of leadership or out there because they really need to help us be that, you know. Like we don't really have that like the girls do and the women do. It just comes out with them, and for us we have to work to be that, you know. And I think that's the part of just trying to remind, you know, the young boys that, you know, it takes work, you know. It takes work for us to be good human beings, to be humble, and to, you know, equal what the women is doing, and so to watch them, you know. And I think we always had good examples of that in our life. So it does come a little not easy, but maybe a little natural for us because we've had those examples, you know, where others may not have. And so that's a part of the dynamic as well.
Oh yeah. Well, today was really good, man. I'm glad I went. Another thing I wanted to talk about tonight real quick was about you know, everybody keeps bringing the and I had that question for me from my friends, and asked me, you know, what does land back mean to you, you know. And today I heard that a lot. You know, I heard land back, you know, let's get this land back, our land back. And it's just something that that said a lot today. But I don't know, like, to you, what does the land back mean to you?
Yeah, you know, when I sit there and I think about it, it's this, for me, it's the relationship. It's not the ownership. And that's what it sounds like sometimes. And to me, it's the reconnection to the land, and all of the parts of the land that are in balance when it's healthy. And we're so out of balance, we don't really know what imbalance looks like, you know. And we don't know how to, as human beings, I think that's one of the struggles, is we're trying to fix the earth when we just need to let the earth do what it needs to do, you know. And so it's trying to, in my thinking, to allow that to happen and to not cause such an impact in our life, in the things we do, not trying to impact the land. And like we were saying the other night, you know, I don't see us as not stewards of the land anymore. I feel like, yeah, we've been forced off, but that doesn't mean we don't have the right to go back and do things. Go gather, go have ceremony. And I think the biggest part is, again, when you're doing that, how are you doing that? Is it sustainable? Is it helping to re-flourish or reseed the land? And that's why I think it's important when people get back involved in culture to know to do it at the right time, you know. And I know I'm cautious about who I share with, because I've seen sites get destroyed where medicine was growing because somebody learned about it and they just go and gather it whenever. And so,
like certain seasons they should be gathering.
And so land back is that too, you know. And I think sometimes it's just so broad that people can't wrap their head around, well, what is my part in it? You know. And even today I've heard the term rematriate, you know, the women having more relationship and taking care of the land, which was a part of it, you know. And but then how does that work for the men? You know, what is our role in that? And so it's a discussion, I think, that has to continue to happen and to evolve, because so much is out of balance, and there's a lot that we're not going to repair as humans. You know, we can only pray and do those things to try to help things be in balance. But a part of, you know, land back is our ceremonies and dances too, you know. And so I think it depends on where you're coming from, what your upbringing is, what your connection to your culture is, whether you have one or you don't, really will determine how you look at land back and define it for yourself. You know, and I think that's what happens is a lot of times when I hear people from the inner cities talking about land back, it's a whole different idea.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
They want to be able to have a piece of land and maybe
put something on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it might be a whole different perspective, and so it's really important, I think, to try to be knowledgeable and engage in those conversations to find out, well, where do you fit in? Where does our people fit in? Where we're at? And because what's happening in the you know, the Bay Area is different than where we're at the lake, you know. So.
Yeah. I think for me, when I think about land back, I think about giving land back where we could just, you know, so people would just leave it alone. I think, you know, from mining or anything like that, give it to us, or we could just leave it alone, you know, protect it. Or maybe that's where the ceremonies used to be, put a ceremony there, you know. But yeah, I never thought about the, you know, when people ask about land back, it means something in different regions and different cultures. And so it's not the same for everyone about land back. And I was listening to this one podcast, and they were talking about when you know, when the hunters go out, you know, back in the day, the men didn't determine like they were gonna get something every day.
Yeah.
I mean, they went every day, but they didn't get anything every day.
Yeah.
But what they did do was set things up on the land. They would fix the river. They would, so the deer can get there.
Yeah.
You know, and so like if something happened, they would clean that area, because that way the deer and all them come through, or the bear. So that way when they hunt, maybe a week later they could probably get one. So every day that they went out to maintain the land and the area. It wasn't just they took their bow and arrows, but it wasn't because they were out hunting. They were just out there to clean that area or fix things. And, you know, when you think about it, they had to, you know, what if there was a fire and they have to clean things out because the deer or whatever animal they were hunting for is not going to be able to go there. Yeah. So that was another thing I didn't think of. Like that's how we took care of the land. You know, we were always maintaining it. Yeah. Make sure the animals are okay. So when we finally get to see them, we get to get some food from our relatives. But that's another way of, you know, learning of how we took care of that land back in the day.
Yeah, and I think like what you're saying is important too, to acknowledge of like being on the land and tending it and making sure things are the way they're supposed to be, and because, you know, like today it's easier to hunt with a high-powered rifle, and you don't have to have everything cleaned and you know, maintained in a way to where the you know, the deer are going to have easy access, or the rabbits are going to have access to get through. Right. And to, you know, even think about how, you know, a lot of times when people were hunting, whether it was bow and arrow or snares, you know, sometimes they didn't get the right one that they were wanting, and maybe they didn't take the shot to take that one, or they snared one and it wasn't the one that was going to benefit them, so they let it go. You know, and so there's always that part of it too, to think about when we're looking at, well, what else was going on while you're out there, and so you would be not only, like you say, hunting, but you would be looking for what other foods are out there, maybe berries or whatever else you needed to know that it's in time, ready to go get.
Don't touch these berries, because the bear pie is going to get those later. You know what I mean? That's something that we were doing, you know, with seasons too. Yeah,
and just like you said, if all the manzanita berries are gone, what are the deer going to come there and get? You know, if you're trying to get a deer, you know, so those are all the parts of, again, knowing the balance and the seasons and what to take and where to take it from. And that was, you know, important knowledge to have.
Yeah. And well, you know, we've been on for like 50 minutes, but the last thing I wanted to get on was today you talked about in class, and it doesn't come up much because a lot of times it's more spirit, you know. And today you brought up energy, and I think, to me, I've been really into positive and negative energy, you know, and I feel like everything is energy, you know, like the Mother Earth is energy, and today you brought up the, you know, having positive energy and using that energy for yourself and your family, and I think that needs to come up more, because a lot more people just come up with, like, you know, our spirit and stuff like that, but you know, in Mother Earth and in this land there's a lot of energy. Yeah,
and I think that's a part of, you know, like the the evolution you all start to have, and I know that I am experienced as I start to grow older, you know, and I feel that, you know, I'm more in tune than I was when I was younger, about energy.
Same.
And really trying to understand the part of how energy works, you know, and so when we think about, you know, like the parts of our ceremonies, you know, there's the physical part of it, which is energy, the our feet hitting the ground, which creates energy, you know, the sounds of the whistle and the shells and the beads making noise, that's all energy. You know, and a lot of times you see it maybe when you're younger, but you really don't know why it's working or why it's all together working together. And so that's one thing that I try to share, so it kind of plants that seed for young people to think about the energy that they bring into a room, the energy that they use when they talk to people, their words, because it is easy to have and bring negative energy.
Right.
And it's so easy to do that. Yeah. And so when I was talking about too of you know, being a facilitator and presenting, if you don't have the right energy, people aren't going to listen to you.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's important that when you do come and you facilitate or you ask to speak, that you bring a good energy with you, you know, because you want people to get something out of what you're saying. And I always say, you know, as long as they walk away with one thing that they might not have known before, it's successful, you know. And and so I try to have those little parts, and because I know working with youth, you only have them for so many minutes before they start to lose focus, before they start to think about other things. And I was really proud because you know, the young ones there, they didn't have their phones out. They weren't looking at their phones. You know, they weren't looking for when is this going to be over. They were looking at me, and I could look in their eyes and see them. And so that was really good. And I always want to thank them for being attentive and listening. And so just trying to plant the seed of good energy.
Yeah,
and
I think that was good.
And good energy can take you a long way.
Right.
And so it's really, like I say, in this world, there's so many negative things going on and negative energy around. It's easy to get consumed in negative energy and just be that way.
I think it's more today. It's more better. It feels better for youth to say, that's bad energy, or you know, that's negative energy, and they'll know because they feel that, you know. But again, using that word energy, bad energy, good energy, and also like, you know, good medicine, bad medicine, you know, like for them to understand, you know, and because that you could really relate to that. You know, if someone says someone's evil, this person might not be Christian, or this person not been in church, so that's more of a, you know, the church term.
And like you're saying, the most important part is talking in language that they understand. You know, and not to say that they're not sophisticated enough to understand other terms, but make it understandable, you know, with your communication and even the story of the wood stacking, you know, like it's like a lot of energy got wasted on that whole process of not
asking.
Asking and not being told this is exactly how I want it to be done. And so it's really important to, like you say, talk to the people that you're either working with or you're facilitating for, know the age, and talk to them in the appropriate language that they understand and can walk away with the best understanding of what was shared, you know, so they can apply it and they can use it and they can spread it amongst their circles. And because that's the important for me is when I do that I know these young people that show up, they have 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 other friends that they're going to have those conversations, and they're going to start to use the language that we model for them. And so if we're going to just have all cuss words and bad words and negative things, then they're going to do the same thing.
Right.
So it's really important to try to, you know, be mindful and put that good positive vibe out there and good energy for them to see.
Yeah, and they definitely felt that, I could tell. And just saying that word energy, just to them, they know what that means. I mean, they drink, you know, again, you got energy drinks and, you know, you got all those things. And for you to bring it up like that, I thought it was pretty good. And another thing really quick was that you bring it up, and I've brought it up too before, that I like when you say what you do, and then you say, but check with your tribe
Mm-hmm.
and see what they do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's one thing that everybody needs to know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if a facilitator is saying this is what I do, sometimes Philly doesn't say that, and so there might be a whole different kind of tribes there. And okay, we're doing that.
Yeah.
But that's not your way. So just make sure this is what I do.
Yeah.
But check your
Mm-hmm.
your tribe and your culture and make sure what you guys do. What your culture, your people
it's
do.
important what you're saying, because I'm not trying to be anybody's expert or guru.
Yeah.
And I always want to point the people back to where they come from, and it's critical, because that's where they're gonna benefit the most from, and be the best person they could be, is going back to where their teachings are at. And so it's always a reminder, and to make sure that I am directing them in the right place, and because a lot of times people want to be the expert, and people want people to follow them, and I don't want any of that. And I always tell people that, like, if you lean on me too much, like, at some point I might let you down.
Right.
So don't put all your chips down with me. Put them down where you come from, and your teachings and your values and protocols, and that's what will benefit your life the most. And so it's always just trying to reiterate that message, that go to your people, go to your family, to your tribe, and that's where it's going to work the best for you.
Yeah. And I do, to end this episode tonight, I do like how you guys acknowledge what land you're doing this on. Every time you guys go somewhere, you always bring in the tribe that you're sitting on, like kind of like the land acknowledgement kind of. You guys let the bird singers come because this is their area. And a lot of facilitators don't do that in certain. They just show up and say, okay, this is what we're doing, but they never say, well, let's bring in these people in because this is their land, and let them say something, and let them do a dance maybe. And I think today was very important, very nice for you guys to do that to the people here at Pechanga.
And it's critical, because what they had to offer, what they did with their songs and dances, it filled me up too. And because through all of this work, it's good work, and you do get tired, and it's a different tired. It's not a fatigue tired. It's more like you've done some good work, your spirit's involved, and so you do need the people from here to help you go home feeling good too. And so it's that exchange of us coming together as a people, whatever tribe we're from, that we come together. You guys have something for us, and we have something for you guys, and make sure that is always a part of it. And I know we've talked about not forcing things on the people in the community we're coming in, and saying, oh, it has to be like this. We have to be the ones doing this. And it was good, because in all the dialogue with the people from here, they really leaned on our community to come here and direct and guide. But it was still exactly what you're saying. Well, you guys have to be involved too. Like, you guys have to bring what you guys have to make this thing, complete and whole. And so yeah, it worked really good. And I'm glad that, that's starting to become the norm again. Instead of it being like, hey, I'm here, and respect everything from where I'm coming from.
And everything I say is go by everything I say. Because I've definitely been in those kind of presentations before. Well, thanks, Eeks, for coming in tonight, and last minute do this last episode, and we'll do another one again coming up. We got to talk about more about, a lot of people keep asking me about dances and regalia and classes, so we'll come that up on the next one. A lot of people want to hear about that, and so we have a dance coming up, home dance this week, end of the month, so we're gonna be busy.
Yeah, definitely. And like you're saying, there's been a lot of people who've got the opportunity to listen and keep asking more questions. So it definitely did spark a lot of good thoughts and conversation. So I'm definitely happy to come back and do that.
Well, one thing that I get a lot of feedback was that we had a lot of people don't want to have this open conversation, I guess, and so it's something that we do. It's open conversation that we just come out and say it, because I guess a lot of people don't want to say stuff like this. But again, we've been here a long time, dancing a long time, so I'm glad that everybody can take it in a positive way of what we're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, man. All right, Eeks. Well, thanks for coming in, man.
Yep.
I'll talk to you later.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you all for tuning in to the Fight for Existence podcast. If you guys want to keep up with the podcast in general, what you could do is follow the social media account. The Instagram account is going to be Fight for Our Existence. Again, that's Fight number 4 Our Existence. Go ahead and give that a follow. And if you guys have any questions for us or you guys would like to be on the podcast, in the Instagram, there's a link. Go ahead and click that. No matter what kind of platform you guys listen to this podcast on, there's always that plus or that follow button. So go ahead and click that so you guys can get notifications when we upload our next episode. And if you guys are listening on Spotify, what you can do is go ahead and rate the show. And if you guys are only listening on Apple Podcasts, what you can also do is write a review for the show. Thank you all for tuning in to the Fight for Existence podcast, and we will talk to you next time.